Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Setup. Blake Morrison had always been a man who played the long game. At 42, his steel-gray eyes held the kind of cold calculation that had made him successful in everything he touched, from his construction empire to his military service in special operations. What most people didn't know was that Blake never forgot a slight, and he never forgave betrayal. Standing in the wings of the Riverside Community Center, watching 12-year-old Emma adjust her competition dress, Blake felt the familiar burn of controlled rage. 6 months had passed since he'd discovered his wife Lila's affair with Troy Brennan, his former business partner and supposed best friend. The divorce had been swift and brutal, but Blake's real revenge was just beginning. Emma looked up at him with her mother's green eyes, but her father's steely determination. "Dad, are you sure this is going to work?" Blake knelt beside his daughter, checking the hidden camera disguised as a decorative brooch on her backup dress, the real competition outfit. "Trust me, sweetheart. Your mother thinks she's so clever, but she has no idea what's coming." The plan had been months in the making. Blake had discovered that Lila and Troy weren't just having an affair. They'd been systematically planning to destroy his reputation and steal his business contacts once the divorce was finalized. They thought they were smart, meeting at the old warehouse district, believing Blake was too heartbroken to pay attention. Instead, he'd been watching, recording, and planning. "Just remember," Blake whispered to Emma, "when your mother tears the decoy dress, act surprised but not upset. Let me handle the rest." Emma nodded solemnly. She'd inherited her father's tactical mind and had readily agreed to help expose her mother's true nature. At 12, she was old enough to understand betrayal and young enough to want justice. The competition hall buzzed with nervous energy as parents and dancers prepared for the regional championships. Blake spotted Lila across the room, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing the expensive emerald dress he'd bought her for their anniversary. The same dress she'd worn to meet Troy that first night Blake had followed them. Troy stood beside her, his arm possessively around her waist. He was everything Blake despised. Handsome in a superficial way, charming but hollow, the kind of man who lived off other success. What Troy didn't know was that Blake had been feeding him false information about upcoming construction contracts for months, setting him up for a spectacular fall. "Blake!" Lila's voice cut through his thoughts like broken glass. She approached with that fake smile she perfected, Troy trailing behind her. "I'm surprised you came. I thought you'd be too busy with your projects." Blake's expression remained neutral, but Emma caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "I wouldn't miss Emma's competition for anything. You know how important family is to me." The emphasis on family made Troy shift uncomfortably. "Good." Blake wanted him nervous. "Well," Lila continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I just want you to know that Troy and I have been helping Emma practice. We want what's best for her." Blake's smile was razor sharp. "Of course you do. Just like you wanted what was best for our marriage." The tension was palpable, but before anyone could respond, the competition coordinator called for all dancers to prepare for warm-ups. Emma hugged Blake tightly, whispering, "Game time, Dad." As Emma walked away, Blake noticed Lila's eyes narrow as she studied their daughter's practice dress, the cheap, easily replaceable outfit Blake had bought specifically for this moment. He could almost see the wheels turning in her vindictive mind. "You know, Blake," Troy said, trying to assert dominance, "Lila and I have been talking about Emma's future. We think she'd benefit from a more stable environment." Blake turned his full attention to Troy, and for a moment, the younger man saw something predatory in those gray eyes that made him take a step back. "Is that so? And what makes you think you have any say in my daughter's future?" "Well, when Lila and I get married." "Married?" Blake's laugh was cold and humorless. "That's interesting. I hope you've discussed prenups. Lila has such expensive tastes." Before Troy could respond, Blake walked away, leaving them both unsettled. Phase 1 was complete. The bait was set, and his ex-wife's jealousy and need to hurt him would do the rest. Chapter 2. The Betrayal Unveiled. The warm-up session proceeded smoothly, with Emma performing her routine flawlessly in the decoy dress. Blake positioned himself strategically near the dressing area, his phone recording from multiple angles. He'd spent years in military intelligence. Surveillance was second nature to him. Lila watched Emma with growing irritation. Blake could see it building, that familiar tightness around her mouth when things weren't going according to her plan. She'd expected Emma to be nervous, to need her support, to choose sides. Instead, Emma seemed perfectly content with her father's guidance. "She's gotten good," Troy commented, trying to make conversation. "Too good," Lila muttered, her mask slipping for just a moment. "Blake always spoils her, makes her think she doesn't need anyone else." Blake's jaw clenched. Even after everything, Lila's narcissism and jealousy toward their daughter's relationship with him still shocked him. It was exactly the ammunition he needed for the custody battle he was secretly preparing. As the competition break began, Emma approached her parents with her usual grace. "Mom, Dad, I'm going to change into my competition dress now." "Of course, sweetheart," Lila said, her voice sugary sweet. "Troy and I were just saying how proud we are of you." Emma's eyes flicked to Blake for just a moment, the signal they'd agreed upon. "Thanks, Mom. The dress is in my bag in the changing room. I'll be right back." As Emma disappeared into the changing area, Blake excused himself to check his equipment. Through his wireless earpiece, he could hear Emma moving around, setting up the secondary camera they'd hidden in her bag. His daughter was turning out to be quite the strategist. "Blake seems different," Troy whispered to Lila, unaware that Blake had left a listening device near their seats. "Calmer. It's making me nervous." "He's probably planning something," Lila replied. "He always was vindictive. But what can he do? The divorce is final. I got the house, and you're taking over his biggest contracts." Blake's smile was predatory. If only she knew that those biggest contracts were elaborate fabrications he'd created to lure Troy into overextending himself financially. By next month, Troy would be bankrupt and facing fraud charges for the fake credentials Blake had helped him submit. The announcement came for dancers to prepare for the main competition. Blake returned to his seat, noting how Lila kept glancing toward the changing rooms with increasing agitation. She was working herself up to something, exactly as he'd predicted. "I'm going to check on Emma," Lila announced suddenly. "She's been in there too long." Blake's pulse quickened. This was it. "Wanted to come with you?" he offered innocently. "No," Lila snapped, then caught herself. "I mean, she probably wants some girl time before the big performance." As Lila headed toward the changing area, Blake activated the recording app on his phone and positioned himself where he could see through the partially open door. Emma was standing in front of the mirror in her backup dress, not the real competition outfit, which was safely hidden in a second bag. "Emma, honey," Lila's voice echoed in the small space. "Is everything all right? You seem distant lately." "I'm fine, Mom," Emma replied carefully. "Just nervous about the competition." Blake watched as Lila circled his daughter like a predator, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her purse. "You know, sweetheart, I've been thinking. After the competition, maybe you should come stay with Troy and me for a while. Give your father some space to process everything." "I like living with Dad," Emma said simply. The mask slipped completely. Lila's face contorted with rage and jealousy. "Your father is poisoning you against me, making you think you don't need your mother. Well, maybe if you can't win this competition, you'll see that Daddy can't fix everything." Blake's grip tightened on his phone as Lila grabbed the decoy dress and ripped it with savage satisfaction. The tearing fabric sounded like a gunshot in the small space. Emma's performance was Oscar-worthy. She gasped, stared at the ruined dress, and then looked up at her mother with perfectly feigned shock. "Mom, what did you do?" "Oops," Lila said with that same smirk Blake had seen her use when she thought she'd gotten away with something. "Now my girls will win for sure." That's when Emma delivered the line Blake had coached her on, her voice calm and controlled. "Dad, relax." She reached into her hidden bag and pulled out her real competition dress, a stunning creation that made the decoy look like a rag. The dress she tore was actually my old practice outfit. Blake stepped into the doorway, his phone capturing Lila's expression as it shifted from triumph to horror to rage. Just wanted to check on you girls, he said pleasantly. Everything okay in here? Chapter 3. The Daughter's Gambit. Blake couldn't help the genuine laughter that burst from his chest as he saw Lila's face cycle through emotions like a broken slot machine. The woman who had once been his wife, who had shared his bed and his dreams, stood holding the shredded remains of a $20 practice dress, realizing she'd been completely outmaneuvered by her own 12-year-old daughter. You. Lila's voice was a strangled whisper. You planned this. Emma stepped into her real competition dress, a masterpiece of emerald silk and crystal beading that Blake had commissioned from a designer in New York. It was worth more than most people's cars, and it made her look like a young goddess of dance. I didn't plan anything, Mom, Emma said with the kind of innocent sincerity that only children could manage while lying through their teeth. I just brought a backup outfit, because you always taught me to be prepared for anything. Blake marveled at his daughter's natural talent for psychological warfare. She'd inherited the best and worst of both parents, his strategic mind and Lila's ability to manipulate. But unlike her mother, Emma used these skills for justice rather than selfishness. The question is, Blake said, stepping fully into the changing room and closing the door behind him, what do we do now? I mean, you just destroyed what you thought was your daughter's competition dress out of pure spite. On camera, Lila's eyes widened as she noticed Blake's phone for the first time. You were recording? The whole thing. Would you like to see? Blake turned the phone around, showing Lila the crystal-clear footage of her ripping the dress and smirking while declaring that her girls would win now. The audio was perfect, too, every vindictive word preserved in digital clarity. You can't use that, Lila hissed. It's illegal to record someone without consent. Blake's smile was cold as winter. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to recording. And since I consented to recording myself, and Emma consented to recording herself, we're perfectly legal. Your presence in the background is just incidental. Emma was now fully dressed in her competition outfit, looking like a professional performer. She turned to her mother with an expression that was eerily similar to Blake's when he was about to destroy an enemy. Mom, I want you to know that I didn't want to do this. I kept hoping you'd be better, that you'd at least pretend to love me more than you hate Dad. But you just proved what I already knew. Emma, sweetheart, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Emma cut her off with the kind of icy control that made Blake proud and slightly terrified of what his daughter might become. You'd rather sabotage me than let Dad have anything good. Even your own daughter's happiness is less important than hurting him. Lila lunged forward as if to grab Emma, but Blake stepped between them, and something in his posture made Lila freeze. This wasn't the heartbroken husband she'd manipulated and betrayed. This was the Special Forces operative who'd survived 3 tours in hostile territory, the man who'd built an empire from nothing, the predator who'd been playing with his food for 6 months. Touch her, and you'll regret it for the rest of your very short life, Blake said quietly. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Lila had never seen this side of Blake before. She'd only known the loving husband and father. She was finally meeting the man who'd earned his reputation in the construction business as someone you didn't cross twice. Now, Blake continued, his voice returning to normal, but his eyes remaining deadly. You have 2 choices. You can walk out of here quietly, take your pathetic boy toy with you, and never interfere with Emma's life again. Or you can make this difficult, and I'll send this video to every parent here, every judge, and every local news station with the story of how a bitter divorcee tried to sabotage her own daughter out of spite. You wouldn't, Lila breathed. Try me. Emma adjusted her dress and checked her appearance in the mirror one final time. I need to go warm up for the real competition now. Mom, I hope you and Troy find whatever you're looking for, but I won't let you hurt Dad anymore. And I won't let you use me to do it. She kissed Blake on the cheek and walked out of the changing room with her head held high, leaving her parents alone for what Blake intended to be the last time. This isn't over, Lila said, but her voice lacked conviction. Blake's laugh was genuinely amused. Oh, Lila, this was never about the dress. This was never about the competition. This was about showing Emma exactly who you really are when you think no one's watching. And now she knows. He moved closer, and Lila instinctively backed against the wall. But you're right about one thing, This isn't over. This was just the opening move. See, while you've been playing house with Troy and planning your little power grab, I've been very busy. You want to know what comes next? Lila's face had gone pale, but she managed to nod. Next, Troy discovers that all those guaranteed contracts he's been boasting about to his investors are fiction. Next, the IRS gets an anonymous tip about some very interesting discrepancies in his tax returns. Next, his ex-wife gets a very detailed report about his hidden assets that he forgot to mention in their divorce settlement. Blake paused, savoring the growing horror in Lila's eyes. And as for you, my dear ex-wife, next you discover that the house you think you won in the divorce settlement has some very expensive problems with the foundation. Problems that existed before our marriage, but were never disclosed. Problems that, according to our prenup, make it my responsibility to fix or your responsibility to pay for. He leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one she used to love. I told you when we got married that I never forget a kindness, and I never forgive betrayal. You chose to test that. Now you get to live with the consequences. Blake walked to the door, then turned back one final time. Oh, and Lila, your daughter just won her first victory. She chose her side. How does it feel to lose the only thing you had left to hurt me with? As he left the changing room, Blake could hear Lila's sharp intake of breath, followed by what sounded suspiciously like a sob. Phase 2 was complete. Emma had seen her mother's true nature, and Lila had just realized that she was no longer playing against a heartbroken husband. She was up against a man who'd been planning her destruction since the day he found them together. The real competition was about to begin. Chapter 4. The Performance. Emma's performance was flawless. Blake watched from the audience as his daughter commanded the stage with a grace and power that seemed impossible for someone her age. Every movement was precise, every expression perfectly controlled. She danced like someone who had just won the first battle of a war she'd been born to fight. The emerald dress caught the stage lights like liquid fire, and Blake could hear the gasps from other parents as Emma executed a series of complex turns that her competitors couldn't hope to match. But it wasn't just technical skill that set her apart. It was the fierce joy in her performance, the unshakable confidence of someone who knew exactly where she stood. In the corner of his eye, Blake noticed Troy whispering urgently to Lila, who sat rigidly in her seat, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. They both kept glancing toward him, but Blake ignored them completely. He had bigger concerns now. His phone buzzed with a text from his private investigator, package delivered. The warehouse photos are in Troy's office safe now. His business partner will discover them Monday morning. Blake smiled grimly. By Monday, Troy would be explaining to his investors why there were compromising photos of him with a married woman hidden in his business files. Photos that would suggest he'd been using his affair with Lila to gain inside information about Blake's construction projects. It wasn't true, but it would be believable enough to destroy Troy's credibility and tank his business relationships. Emma finished her routine to thunderous applause. She curtsied gracefully, her eyes finding Blake's in the audience and giving him the slightest nod. Mission accomplished. As the judges deliberated, Blake made his way backstage to congratulate his daughter. He found her surrounded by other dancers and their parents, all marveling at her dress and performance. Emma handled the attention with poise that reminded him painfully of how Lila used to be, before the bitterness and jealousy consumed her. Dad! Emma broke away from the group and threw her arms around him. Did you see? I nailed the double pirouette sequence. You were magnificent, Blake said, meaning every word. I'm proud of you for more than just the dancing, you know. Emma's smile was sharp with satisfaction. She showed me exactly who she is today, didn't she? Just like you said she would. Blake nodded grimly. It gave him no pleasure to be right about this, but Emma had needed to see Lila's true nature for herself. No amount of explanation from Blake could have been as effective as watching her mother try to sabotage her out of pure spite. Blake! The voice behind him made his blood run cold, but not with fear, with anticipation. He turned to see Robert Shun, Troy's business partner and financial backer, approaching with a concerned expression. Robert was a serious man in his 50s who'd built his fortune through careful investments and due diligence. Blake had known him for years and respected him, which made what was about to happen almost regrettable. "Robert," Blake greeted him warmly. "What brings you to a dance competition?" "My niece is competing." Robert gestured toward one of the other dancers. "But actually, I wanted to talk to you. I heard about your divorce." "I'm sorry." Blake appreciated the genuine sympathy in Robert's voice. "These things happen. I'm just focused on Emma now." "That's good to hear. Actually, I was wondering if you might have some insight into a business matter." Robert lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Troy's been telling me about some major contracts you supposedly discussed with him before the divorce. Multi-million-dollar projects. But when I try to verify them independently." Blake feigned surprise perfectly. "What kind of contracts?" "Government infrastructure projects. Military housing developments. He says you were planning to subcontract the work to him before things went bad between you." Blake's expression shifted to concern. "Robert, I think we need to talk privately. Soon." The worry in Robert's eyes deepened. "Is there something I should know?" Before Blake could answer, the competition coordinator announced that the results were ready. Blake placed a reassuring hand on Robert's shoulder. "Let's get through this, then we'll talk. My office Monday morning." Robert nodded grimly, and Blake knew that Phase 3 was already beginning to unfold. By Monday morning, Robert would have discovered the planet photos and would be questioning everything Troy had told him. Blake's revelation about the non-existent contracts would be the final nail in Troy's professional coffin. Emma won first place, as Blake had known she would. As she accepted her trophy, her eyes found her mother in the audience. Lila was clapping mechanically, her face a study in suppressed rage. Troy sat beside her, completely unaware that his business empire was about to crumble. During the trophy presentation, Blake's phone buzzed with another text, this one from his lawyer, custody evaluation scheduled for Thursday. Judge wants to interview Emma privately. Blake's smile was predatory. By Thursday, Emma would testify about witnessing her mother deliberately sabotage her dress out of spite, all captured on video. The footage would demonstrate Lila's vindictive nature and her willingness to hurt their daughter to get back at Blake. As the ceremony concluded, Blake watched Troy approach them with congratulations for Emma. The younger man was trying too hard to play the role of devoted stepfather-to-be, and Emma's polite but distant responses clearly frustrated him. "Emma, that was incredible," Troy gushed. "Lila and I are so proud of you." "Thank you," Emma replied coolly. "Dad's been helping me train. He's really good at strategy." The double meaning wasn't lost on Blake, who had to suppress a laugh. Troy, however, was oblivious. "Well, maybe now that the competition's over, we can all sit down and talk about the future," Troy continued. "You know, about custody arrangements and—" "Troy," Blake's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. "I think you have more pressing concerns than my custody arrangements." Something in Blake's tone made Troy pause. "What do you mean?" Blake glanced at Robert, who was listening intently while pretending to chat with other parents. "Just that business can be so unpredictable. One day you're on top of the world. The next day you're explaining to investors why their money disappeared." Troy's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing specific," Blake said innocently. "Just general observations about the construction business. It's so important to have honest partners, don't you think?" As Blake and Emma walked away, leaving Troy standing frozen with dawning comprehension, Blake felt the familiar satisfaction of a plan coming together perfectly. Troy was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, he'd underestimated his former friend. The dance competition was over, but the real performance was just beginning. Chapter 5. The Walls Close In. Monday morning arrived with the efficiency of a military operation. Blake sat in his corner office overlooking the construction site where his crews were building the new Civic Center, a real contract, unlike the fictional ones Troy had been counting on. Through his window, he watched the workers who respected him, the foreman who trusted his judgment, the empire he'd built through careful planning and absolute ruthlessness when necessary. At exactly 9 a.m., Robert Chun arrived looking haggard and worried. Blake's secretary showed him in, and Robert immediately began pacing Blake's office like a caged animal. "Blake, we need to talk. Something's very wrong with Troy." Blake poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine in his office. adding cream to Robert's exactly the way he liked it. Details mattered in psychological warfare. What kind of wrong? I went to his office early this morning to pick up some files, and I found something in his safe. Robert pulled out a manila envelope with shaking hands. These photos, they're of Troy with your ex-wife, in compromising positions, time-stamped during your marriage. Blake examined the photos with the perfect expression of a man seeing evidence of betrayal for the first time. His private investigator had done excellent work. The photos were real, just not taken when the timestamps indicated. Modern technology made such deceptions almost trivially easy. Jesus Christ, Blake breathed, injecting hurt and anger into his voice. How long? When were these taken? According to the timestamps, at least 2 years ago. Blake, I'm so sorry. If I'd known. Blake slumped into his chair, playing the role of devastated friend. 2 years. They were planning this for 2 years. There's more, Robert said reluctantly. I found documents suggesting Troy was using information about your business to plan his expansion. Contract details, client lists, financial projections. It looks like he was positioning himself to steal your clients. Blake's performance was masterful, the right amount of shock, betrayal, and slowly building rage. That son of a bitch. No wonder he knew exactly which contracts to bid on. He had inside information from my own wife. I confronted him this morning, Robert continued. He denied everything, said the photos were fake, that you were trying to frame him. But Blake, the evidence is pretty damning. Blake stood and walked to his window, letting Robert see the tension in his shoulders. What are you going to do? I'm pulling my investment. Effective immediately. I can't be associated with this betrayal. My reputation is everything in this business. Phase 3 was proceeding exactly as planned. Blake turned back to Robert with an expression of grim determination. I appreciate you telling me, Robert, and I want you to know this changes nothing between us. You couldn't have known. Robert's relief was palpable. Thank you, Blake. I was worried you'd blame me for backing him. You're not responsible for other people's betrayals, Blake said, meaning every word. Robert was collateral damage, but necessary collateral damage. Sometimes good people got hurt when you went to war with bad ones. After Robert left, Blake's phone rang. Lila's number appeared on the screen, and he let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the 4th call, he answered. What do you want, Lila? You bastard. Her voice was shrill with panic. What did you do to Troy? Blake leaned back in his chair, savoring her distress. I didn't do anything to Troy. I've been busy with Emma's training schedule and some meetings about real contracts. What? His business partner pulled out. All his investors are abandoning him. Someone planted fake photos in his office, and now everyone thinks he's a corporate spy. Fake photos. Blake injected just the right amount of confusion into his voice. What kind of photos? You know exactly what kind. Photos of him and me. Someone doctored timestamps to make it look like we were together years ago. Blake was quiet for a long moment, then spoke in a voice that could freeze blood. Lila, are you telling me that there are photos of you with Troy that could be doctored to look like they were taken during our marriage? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Because if such photos exist, Blake continued relentlessly, that means you were intimate enough with him to pose for them at some point. Which means my lawyer is going to be very interested in establishing exactly when your relationship with Troy began. Blake, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You just confirmed that compromising photos of you and Troy exist. Thank you for that admission. My lawyer will be calling you. Blake hung up and immediately called his attorney. David? Blake Morrison. I need you to file a motion to reopen the financial aspects of my divorce. Yes. I have new evidence that suggests the adultery began much earlier than disclosed. While Blake was on the phone, his secretary buzzed him. Mr. Morrison, there's a Troy Brennan here to see you. He says it's urgent. Blake smiled coldly. Send him in. Troy burst into Blake's office looking like a man on the edge of a complete breakdown. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his eyes had the wild look of someone watching their world collapse in real time. Blake, please. We need to talk. Of course, Blake said pleasantly, hanging up the phone. Would you like some coffee? You look like you need it. Cut the act. Troy slammed his hands on Blake's desk. I know you're behind this. The photos, the fake contracts, turning Robert against me. It's all you. Blake's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Troy, I'm going to give you one chance to walk out of my office. If you ever put your hands on my property again, or raise your voice in my presence again, I'll throw you through that window. The casual way Blake delivered the threat made Troy take a step back. For the first time, he was seeing past the civilized businessman to the predator underneath. You can't prove anything, Troy said, but his voice lacked conviction. I don't need to prove anything, Blake replied calmly. You've destroyed yourself. I just provided the rope. Troy's face crumpled as the full scope of his situation hit him. Please, Blake, I'm ruined. Robert was my biggest investor. Without him, I can't meet my obligations. I'll lose everything. Blake stood slowly, his full height and military bearing making Troy unconsciously retreat toward the door. Good. Blake, please. I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? Blake's voice was deadly quiet. You fucked my wife. You betrayed our friendship. You tried to steal my business. And worst of all, you tried to manipulate my daughter into choosing between her parents. Those aren't mistakes, Troy. Those are declarations of war. Blake moved around his desk with predatory grace. And the thing about declaring war on me is that I always win. I've been planning your destruction since the day I found out about you. Every conversation we've had, every piece of advice I gave you, every contract I mentioned, it was all designed to lead you exactly where you are right now. Troy backed against the door, his face pale with horror. You're insane. No, Blake said softly. I'm thorough, and I'm just getting started. As Troy fled the office, Blake returned to his desk and made another phone call. Detective Martinez? This is Blake Morrison. I have some information about financial fraud that you might find interesting. The walls weren't just closing in on Troy and Lila. They were about to collapse entirely. Chapter 6, The Trap Springs. Thursday morning, Emma Morrison sat in Judge Patricia Williams' chambers with the composure of someone twice her age. Blake waited in the hallway outside, checking his watch and fielding text messages from his lawyer, his private investigator, and his construction foreman. Everything was proceeding according to schedule. Through the door, he could hear Emma's clear voice explaining to the judge about the dance competition, about her mother's behavior, about the dress incident. She spoke without vindictiveness, simply stating facts in her precise way. Blake had coached her to tell the truth, all of it, but he hadn't needed to coach her to be effective. Emma had inherited his strategic mind and his ability to remain calm under pressure. Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez, Brennan in custody. Financial fraud, identity theft, tax evasion. Your tip was very helpful. Blake allowed himself a small smile. Troy had made it easy by actually falsifying documents to support his fake government contracts. All Blake had done was make sure the right authorities found the evidence at the right time. Another text, this one from his PI. Lila's lawyer withdrew from her case this morning. Conflict of interest. She's scrambling to find new representation. Of course, her lawyer had withdrawn. Blake had made sure to hire the 3 best family law attorneys in the city as consultants for his own case, creating conflicts of interest that prevented them from representing Lila. It was perfectly legal and devastatingly effective. The door to the judge's chambers opened, and Emma emerged with a court officer. She walked directly to Blake and hugged him tightly. How did it go? Blake asked quietly. I told her everything, Emma said simply. About Mom tearing the dress, about her trying to get me to choose sides, about the things she said when she thought I wasn't listening. Blake kissed the top of her head. I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Mr. Morrison? Judge Williams appeared in the doorway. Can I speak with you for a moment? Blake entered the judge's chambers, noting her serious expression. Judge Williams was known for her fairness, but also her intolerance for parental manipulation during custody disputes. Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed the video evidence your attorney submitted, and I've spoken extensively with your daughter. I want to be clear about something. Blake waited, his expression neutral. Your daughter is clearly intelligent and articulate beyond her years. She's also clearly devoted to you. But I need to ask, are you coaching her to say things that might not be entirely true? Blake met the judge's eyes steadily. Your Honor, I've taught my daughter to always tell the truth, especially when it's difficult. Every word she's told you can be verified through evidence or witnesses. I haven't asked her to exaggerate or lie about anything. Judge Williams studied him for a long moment. Mr. Morrison, in my experience, when one parent appears to be winning a custody battle this decisively, it's usually because the other parent has made serious errors in judgment. Is that the case here? Your Honor, my ex-wife's actions speak for themselves. The video evidence shows her deliberately sabotaging our daughter's dress out of spite. Emma has witnessed numerous instances of her mother trying to manipulate her into taking sides. And now my ex-wife is involved with a man who's currently being investigated for fraud. Blake paused, then continued carefully. I've never tried to turn Emma against her mother. I've simply refused to prevent Emma from drawing her own conclusions about her mother's behavior. The judge nodded slowly. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to grant you temporary full custody pending a complete psychological evaluation of both parents. Your ex-wife will have supervised visitation rights once per week until we can determine what's in Emma's best interests. Blake felt a surge of satisfaction, but kept his expression appropriately solemn. Thank you, Your Honor. Emma's welfare is my only concern. As Blake and Emma left the courthouse, Blake's phone rang. Lila's name appeared on the screen, and this time, he answered on the first ring. Blake, please, we need to talk. Lila's voice was ragged with desperation. I know you're angry, but Emma is my daughter too. Actually, Lila, according to Judge Williams, Emma is primarily my daughter now. You have supervised visitation on Sundays. Blake could hear Lila's sharp intake of breath. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything to you. You did it to yourself. Blake's voice was ice cold. When you chose to sabotage our daughter's competition out of spite, you showed the court exactly who you are. That was a mistake. I was angry and you revealed your true nature. Blake cut her off. The same nature that led you to cheat on your husband with his best friend. The same nature that led you to try to manipulate a 12-year-old child into choosing sides in your petty revenge games. Lila was crying now, but Blake felt no sympathy. Blake, please. I'll do anything. I'll break up with Troy. I'll go to counseling, whatever you want. Blake's laugh was harsh. Too late for that. Troy's in federal custody on fraud charges. As for counseling, the judge has ordered psychological evaluations for both of us. I'm sure yours will be very illuminating. You destroyed him, Lila whispered. You destroyed us both. No, Lila. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices. You destroyed yourself. Blake ended the call and looked down at Emma, who had been listening quietly. Are you okay with all this, sweetheart? Emma considered the question seriously, the way she approached everything important. Dad, I love Mom, but I don't like who she becomes when she's angry. And I don't trust her not to hurt me to get back at you. Blake felt a stab of pain for his daughter's lost innocence, but also pride in her clarity of thought. I'm sorry you had to learn this about people so young. You didn't teach me this, Dad. Mom did. As they walked to Blake's truck, Emma asked, what happens now? Blake helped her into the passenger seat, considering his answer. The immediate threats to his daughter's well-being had been neutralized. Troy was facing federal charges that would likely result in prison time. Lila had been exposed as vindictive and unstable in front of family court judge. The custody battle was essentially over. But Blake Morrison had never been the type of man to leave enemies partially defeated. There were still moves to be made, still consequences to be delivered. Now, Blake said, starting the engine, we make sure that people who hurt our family remember the lesson for the rest of their lives. Emma nodded with satisfaction that was equal parts childlike and chilling. Good. I don't want them to hurt anyone else the way they hurt us. Blake looked at his daughter with a mixture of love and concern. She was becoming formidable in her own right, and he wondered if he was raising a protector or creating a monster. Time would tell. For now, though, they had work to finish. Chapter 7. The Final Moves. 6 weeks later, Blake Morrison stood in his kitchen making breakfast for Emma, who sat at the counter reviewing her advanced placement mathematics homework. The domestic scene was peaceful, but Blake's mind was focused on the final phases of his campaign against those who had betrayed his family. His phone buzzed with a text from his lawyer. Lila's psychological evaluation came back. Narcissistic personality disorder with vindictive tendencies. Recommend supervised visitation continue indefinitely. Blake showed the message to Emma, who read it with her usual analytical calm. Does this mean I don't have to live with her part-time? It means the judge will probably let you decide how much contact you want with your mother, within reason, Blake replied, setting a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I still love her, Dad, but I don't trust her judgment about what's good for me. Blake marveled at his daughter's emotional intelligence. At 13, she could articulate complex feelings about family dysfunction with more clarity than most adults. It was both impressive and heartbreaking. His phone rang. Detective Martinez returning his call. Blake, I wanted to update you on the Brennan case. He took a plea deal yesterday. 18 months federal prison, plus restitution to his investors. He'll be disbarred from government contracting permanently. What about the tax evasion charges? Those are state charges. He's looking at another 2 years, running concurrently, plus penalties and interest on back taxes that'll probably bankrupt him completely. Blake thanked the detective and hung up, feeling the satisfaction of a job thoroughly completed. Troy Brennan would spend the next 2 years in federal prison and emerge with no money, no business prospects, and a criminal record that would follow him forever. Justice, Blake style. Emma looked up from her homework. Was that about Troy? He's going to prison for financial fraud. 18 months, maybe more. Emma processed this information with the same cool analysis she applied to everything else. Good. Maybe when he gets out, he'll think twice before betraying people who trusted him. Blake's phone rang again. This time it was Robert Shun, calling with news about the business side of the aftermath. Blake, I wanted you to know, I'm liquidating Troy's construction assets. His equipment, his contracts, everything. Since you were the one who exposed his fraud, I thought you might be interested in some of the pieces. Blake smiled grimly. What did you have in mind? His office building, for starters. Prime location downtown. His crane fleet, they're practically new. And his client list, what's left of it after the scandal broke. It was poetic justice. Blake would acquire Troy's business assets for pennies on the dollar, essentially absorbing what remained of his former friend's empire. Troy had tried to steal Blake's clients and contracts. Instead, Blake would inherit Troy's. Send me the details, Blake said. I'll make you a fair offer. After the call, Emma looked at her father with something approaching awe. You're not just destroying them. You're taking everything they built. I'm acquiring legitimate business assets from a liquidation sale. Blake corrected gently. But yes, the practical effect is that I benefit from their downfall. Emma smiled with the kind of cold satisfaction that reminded Blake uncomfortably of himself. That's perfect. They try to take everything from us. So now we take everything from them. Blake was about to respond when his doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, he could see Lila standing on his porch, looking haggard and desperate. She'd lost weight, her usually perfect hair was unkempt, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. Stay here, Blake told Emma, then went to answer the door. Lila's appearance was even worse up close. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and she reeked of cheap wine and cigarettes, habits she'd never had during their marriage. Blake, please. I need to talk to you. You have supervised visitation on Sundays, Blake replied coldly. If you want to see Emma, you could do it then. It's not about Emma. It's about me. About us. Lila's voice cracked with desperation. I know I made mistakes, but I've lost everything. Troy's in prison. I can't find work because word got out about the affair, and I'm about to lose the house. Blake's expression remained impassive. That's unfortunate, but it's not my problem anymore. Blake, please. Lila grabbed his arm, and Blake looked down at her hand with such coldness that she immediately let go. I know you're angry, but we have a daughter together. We have to find a way to coexist. We do coexist. You see Emma on Sundays under court supervision. That's coexistence. Lila's face crumpled. I can't live like this. Everyone knows what I did. No one will hire me. My friends won't talk to me. I'm all alone. Blake felt a flicker of something that might have been pity, but it died quickly when he remembered Emma's face after the dress incident. You made your choices, Lila. You chose Troy over your family. You chose revenge over your daughter's happiness. You chose to sabotage Emma's competition out of spite. These are the consequences. But I love Emma. Love isn't enough, Blake said quietly. Love without wisdom, without self-control, without putting your child's needs above your own wants. That's not love at all. That's just possession. Lila stared at him with growing horror. You're never going to forgive me, are you? Blake's smile was arctic. I told you when we got married that I never forget a kindness and I never forgive betrayal. You chose to test that. Now you know I meant it. So what happens now? I just exist on the margins of my daughter's life forever. Blake shrugged. That depends entirely on you. You could use this experience to become a better person. Go to therapy. Address your narcissistic tendencies. Learn to put Emma's needs before your own ego. If you do that consistently for several years, maybe Emma will choose to have a relationship with you. Several years. Lila, you try to sabotage your own daughter's dance competition because you were jealous of her relationship with me. That's not something people recover from quickly. Trust takes time to rebuild, and Emma's trust in you is completely shattered. Blake stepped back into his house, preparing to close the door. You have a choice to make. You can spend the rest of your life feeling sorry for yourself and blaming me for the consequences of your actions. Or you can use this as an opportunity to become the kind of person who deserves Emma's respect. But either way, you'll do it from a distance. As Blake closed the door, he could hear Lila sobbing on his porch. He felt no satisfaction in her misery, only cold certainty that justice had been served. Emma appeared in the hallway, having listened to the entire conversation. She looked terrible. Yes, she did. Do you think she'll get better? Become a better person, I mean. Blake considered the question seriously. I don't know, sweetheart. People can change, but only if they want it badly enough. Your mother would have to admit that her problems are her fault, not mine. That's usually the hardest part for people like her. Emma nodded with the wisdom of someone who'd learned hard lessons about human nature very young. I hope she does get better. But even if she does, I don't think I'll ever trust her the way I used to. Blake pulled his daughter into a hug, proud of her insight and saddened by its necessity. That's probably wise, Emma. Trust should be earned, not assumed. As they returned to the kitchen to finish breakfast, Blake's phone buzzed with one final text from his private investigator. Lila's employment applications, all rejected. References from Troy's business associates confirming affair during marriage. She's effectively blacklisted from her profession. Blake deleted the message without showing it to Emma. His daughter didn't need to know that Blake had systematically destroyed Lila's professional reputation by ensuring that everyone in her industry knew about her adultery and vindictive behavior. Some revenges were too complete to share, even with willing conspirators. The war was over. Blake Morrison had achieved total victory. His enemies were destroyed, his daughter was safe, and his empire was stronger than ever. But as he watched Emma solving complex mathematical equations with the same cold precision she'd applied to manipulating her mother, Blake wondered if perhaps his victory had come at a cost he hadn't anticipated. His daughter was becoming formidable, but was she also becoming like him? Time would tell. For now, they had won, and that was enough. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 3 months after Lila's desperate visit to Blake's house, Emma Morrison celebrated her 13th birthday in the backyard of their family home. The party was elegant but modest, a few close friends, some of Blake's trusted employees and their families, and notably absent were any representatives from Emma's maternal side. Blake watched his daughter blow out the candles on her birthday cake, noting how poised and confident she'd become. The shy 12-year-old who'd been torn between her parents was gone, replaced by a young woman who knew exactly where her loyalties lay and why. Dad, Emma approached him as the party was winding down. I got a letter from Mom today. Blake's expression tightened slightly. What kind of letter? Emma pulled a handwritten note from her pocket. Blake could see Lila's familiar handwriting, shakier than usual, but still recognizable. She says she's been going to therapy and wants to know if I'd be willing to have a phone call with her. No pressure, just to talk. Blake read the letter carefully. It was remarkably different from Lila's usual communications. No manipulation, no guilt trips, no attempts to blame Blake for her situation. Just a simple request and an acknowledgement that Emma had every right to refuse. What do you want to do? Blake asked. Emma considered the question with her usual analytical approach. I think I want to try, but I want you to listen in on the call, and I want to stop whenever I want to. Blake nodded. That seems reasonable. When do you want to call her? Tonight, after everyone goes home. Later that evening, Blake sat beside Emma as she dialed Lila's number on speakerphone. The voice that answered was different from the desperate, broken woman who'd appeared on Blake's doorstep. Calmer, more thoughtful. Emma, thank you so much for calling. Hi, Mom. Emma's voice was carefully neutral. Dad's listening too, just so you know. That's fine. Hello, Blake. Blake didn't respond, but Emma glanced at him questioningly. After a moment, he said, Lila, Emma, I wanted to tell you that I've been in therapy for 3 months now. My therapist has helped me understand some things about myself that I didn't want to see before. Like what? Emma asked. Like the fact that I was using you to hurt your father, instead of protecting you from our problems. And that when I tore your dress, it wasn't really about the competition, it was about my own jealousy and anger. Blake raised an eyebrow. This level of self-awareness was new for Lila. The therapist says I have something called narcissistic personality disorder, Lila continued. It means I have trouble seeing other people's needs when they conflict with what I want. But I'm working on it. Emma leaned forward, interested despite herself. Are you getting better? I think so. It's hard work, and I have to check myself constantly. But I'm starting to understand how much I hurt you, and how much I hurt your father, and how much I hurt myself. There was a long pause before Lila continued. Emma, I want you to know that I don't blame your father for what happened to me. I made my choices, and I'm living with the consequences. Your father was protecting you from me when I wasn't capable of protecting you myself. Blake's expression softened slightly. This was not the Lila he'd been married to. This was someone taking actual responsibility for her actions. What about Troy? Emma asked bluntly. Troy was a mistake. A big one. I was angry at your father for reasons that had nothing to do with him, and I made choices that hurt everyone I was supposed to love. Troy's in prison now, and I know your father had a hand in that, but Troy earned everything that happened to him. Blake found himself genuinely surprised by Lila's honesty. Either she'd undergone a genuine transformation, or she'd become a much better actress. Mom, Emma said carefully, I still love you, but I don't trust you, and I'm not ready to spend time alone with you. Understand, Lila replied, and Blake could hear tears in her voice. I know I have to earn your trust back, and I know it might take years. I just want you to know that I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your mother. Emma looked at Blake, who gave her an encouraging nod. Maybe we could talk on the phone sometimes? Like this. I would love that, Lila said. And Emma, I want you to know that your father is a good man. He's hard, and he's unforgiving when people betray him, but he's good. You're lucky to have him. Blake felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first crack in the wall of ice he'd built around his heart where Lila was concerned. I know I am, Emma said simply. After they hung up, Emma looked at her father thoughtfully. She sounded different. People can change, Blake acknowledged. Though it's rare, and it's usually only when they've lost everything else first. Do you think she really means it? Blake considered the question carefully. I think she's in enough pain that she's finally willing to look at herself honestly. Whether she can sustain that kind of self-examination over time remains to be seen. Emma nodded. I want to give her a chance, but I want to be careful too. That's wise, Blake said. Trust should be earned gradually, and you should never feel obligated to trust someone just because they're family. As Emma headed upstairs to bed, Blake remained in his chair, thinking about the conversation. Lila's transformation, if genuine, was remarkable. But Blake Morrison was not a man who believed in second chances for people who'd betrayed him at the deepest level. His phone buzzed with a text from his private investigator. Lila's therapy sessions confirmed. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, licensed psychologist specializing in personality disorders. Sessions 3 times per week for past 14 weeks. Appears legitimate. Blake smiled grimly. Even when extending olive branches, he verified everything. Trust, but verify, especially when it came to people who'd already proven themselves capable of elaborate deception. But as he turned off the lights and headed upstairs, Blake found himself wondering if perhaps his greatest victory wasn't the destruction of his enemies, but the possibility that his daughter might grow up in a world where redemption was still possible, even for those who'd fallen the furthest. Chapter 9. The Endgame. 1 year later, Blake Morrison stood in his newly expanded office, looking out over a construction empire that had grown by 30% since his divorce. The acquisition of Troy's assets had provided the foundation for unprecedented expansion, and Blake's reputation for absolute reliability had attracted clients who valued dealing with a man whose word was his bond. Emma, now 14, sat in the chair across from his desk, reviewing her high school course selections. She'd tested out of 8th grade and would be starting as a sophomore in the fall, her sharp mind having inherited the best of both parents' intelligence while avoiding their character flaws. "Dad," Emma said, looking up from her paperwork, "I've been thinking about Mom." Blake set down his coffee and gave her his full attention. Over the past year, Emma had maintained weekly phone calls with Lila, gradually building a cautious relationship with a woman who was slowly earning the right to be called her mother again. "What about her?" "She's been consistent for a whole year now. Therapy, honest conversations, taking responsibility for her mistakes. And she never asks me to choose sides or tries to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her." Blake nodded. Lila's transformation had been remarkably sustained. His PI's reports confirmed that she'd maintained steady employment in a non-profit organization, lived modestly, attended therapy religiously, and had no romantic relationships or social drama. "What are you thinking?" Blake asked. "I think I'd like to try an unsupervised visit. Just lunch somewhere public, maybe the mall. See how it goes." Blake felt the familiar protective instinct rise in his chest, but he forced himself to consider Emma's request objectively. His daughter was no longer the vulnerable 12-year-old who needed protection from her mother's vindictive games. She was becoming a formidable young woman who could take care of herself. "What does your gut tell you?" Blake asked. Emma considered the question seriously. "My gut says she's genuinely different. Not perfect, but honest about her imperfections. And I think I need to see if I can have a relationship with the person she's becoming." Blake nodded slowly. "If you want to try, I'll support you. But we keep the same safety protocols. You call me every hour, you have an exit strategy, and you come home whenever you want to." "Agreed," Emma said. "And Dad? Even if things go well with Mom, nothing changes between us. You're still my primary parent. You're still the one I trust most." Blake felt a surge of love and pride for his daughter's wisdom. She understood that healing her relationship with her mother didn't require betraying her relationship with her father. That afternoon, Blake drove Emma to meet Lila at a restaurant in the mall. As they pulled up, Blake could see Lila waiting outside, and he was struck by how different she looked. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect hair. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, minimal makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked younger and more genuine than she had in years. "She looks nervous," Emma observed. "She should be," Blake replied. "This is the most important conversation she'll ever have." Emma kissed Blake on the cheek and got out of the car. Blake watched as Lila's face lit up with genuine joy at seeing their daughter. The hug they shared looked natural and unforced, and Blake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. His phone rang as he drove away. The caller ID showed Judge Williams' office. "Mr. Morrison, this is Judge Williams. I wanted to let you know that I'm closing the Morrison custody case. Given Emma's age and maturity and the positive reports about Mrs. Morrison's progress, I'm comfortable allowing Emma to make her own decisions about visitation moving forward." Blake thanked the judge and hung up, feeling the weight of a year-long legal battle finally lifting from his shoulders. The war was truly over now, not because he destroyed his enemies, but because his enemies had either destroyed themselves or genuinely reformed. 3 hours later, Emma called to be picked up. Blake found her and Lila sitting together outside the restaurant, looking relaxed and talking quietly. "How did it go?" Blake asked as Emma got in the car. "Good," Emma said simply. "Really good. She's actually becoming someone I can respect." Blake looked in the rearview mirror as they drove away, seeing Lila wave goodbye to their daughter with a smile that looked genuine rather than performed. That evening, as Blake was reviewing construction reports, Emma knocked on his home office door. "Dad, I wanted to say something." Blake set aside his work and gave her his full attention. I know what you did to Troy and to Mom after the divorce. I know you didn't just defend yourself. You systematically destroyed them both. Blake kept his expression neutral, waiting to see where this was going. And I want you to know that I'm glad you did it. Blake raised an eyebrow, surprised by her bluntness. They hurt us, Emma continued. They betrayed our family and tried to use me as a weapon against you. And when they did that, you showed them what happens when you declare war on Blake Morrison. Emma's smile was sharp with satisfaction. Troy's in prison, bankrupt and disgraced. Mom lost everything and had to rebuild herself from nothing. And we came out stronger than ever. Blake studied his daughter's face, seeing his own ruthless streak reflected there. And how do you feel about that? I feel like justice was served, Emma said simply. You protected our family and punished the people who threatened it. That's what fathers are supposed to do. Blake nodded slowly. And if your mother had never changed? If she'd remained vindictive and manipulative? Then she would have stayed destroyed, Emma replied without hesitation. The only reason she's getting a second chance is because she earned it by completely rebuilding herself. You didn't give her mercy, you gave her justice. She faced the consequences of her actions and chose to become better. Blake felt a complex mixture of pride and concern as he recognized just how completely his daughter had internalized his worldview. She understood power, consequences, and the price of betrayal in ways that most adults never would. Emma, Blake said carefully, I want you to understand something. The path I chose, total destruction of my enemies, it's effective, but it's also dangerous. It can turn you into someone who sees every conflict as a war to be won rather than a problem to be solved. Emma considered this thoughtfully. But some conflicts are wars, Dad. Some people only understand strength. And some betrayals can't be forgiven. They can only be punished. Blake realized that his daughter had learned the most important lesson he could teach her, discernment. She understood the difference between conflicts that required mercy and conflicts that demanded justice. She knew when to forgive and when to destroy. Just promise me, Blake said, that you'll always consider whether someone can be redeemed before you decide to destroy them. Your mother proved that people can change if the consequences are severe enough and they genuinely want to be better. I promise, Dad. But I also promise that if someone betrays our family the way Troy and Mom did, I won't hesitate to help you destroy them. Blake pulled his daughter into a hug, proud of the formidable young woman she was becoming and slightly terrified of what the world would face when Emma Morrison grew in her full power. Outside, the sun was setting over the construction empire Blake had built through careful planning, absolute determination, and the ruthless elimination of those who stood against him. His enemies were defeated, his daughter was safe, and his family was stronger than ever. Blake Morrison had won completely, and he would never apologize for the methods he'd used to protect what mattered most. In his world, there were no participation trophies. There were only winners and losers, and he had taught his daughter to always win. The dance of retribution was complete, and the Morrison family would never be vulnerable again. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.
Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Warning Signs. Alec Vance stood in his woodworking shop, sanding down a cherry wood jewelry box he'd been crafting for 3 weeks. The autumn light filtered through the dusty windows, casting amber shadows across his workbench. At 42, he'd built a modest but successful custom furniture business from nothing, every piece telling a story, every joint precisely fitted. "Alec?" Audrey's voice drifted from the house, thin and uncertain. He set down the sandpaper and wiped his hands, concern flickering across his weathered features. 6 months ago, his wife had been vibrant, a pediatric nurse who sang off-key while cooking, who left sticky notes with terrible puns on his coffee maker. Now she moved through their home like a ghost, haunting her own life. He found her in the kitchen, staring at her phone with trembling hands. "What's wrong?" He touched her shoulder gently. "Nothing. Just..." Clarissa called again. "She thinks I should invest in her wellness retreat idea." Audrey's laugh came out hollow. "She's so excited about it." Alec's jaw tightened at the mention of Audrey's older sister. Clarissa Stafford had always been the golden child, beautiful, charismatic, perpetually chasing the next big thing. She'd moved back to town 8 months ago after her third failed business venture, immediately attaching herself to Audrey like a barnacle. "You already gave her $15,000 last month," Alec said carefully, "for the boutique consulting firm that never opened. She's my sister. She's going through a rough time." Audrey's eyes wouldn't meet his. "You don't understand what it's like, Alec. She was there for me when we were kids, when Mom was..." She trailed off, and Alec felt the familiar wall rise between them. He'd never met their mother. She'd died when Audrey was 12 and Clarissa was 16. But he knew the stories. The alcoholism, the violence. How Clarissa had supposedly protected little Audrey from the worst of it. "I understand loyalty," Alec said quietly, "but something feels off. You've been different since she came back." "Different how?" "Defensive now. Anxious. Secretive. You're not sleeping. Yesterday I found you crying in the bathroom at 3 a.m., and you wouldn't tell me why." Audrey pulled away from him. "I'm just stressed from work. The hospital is understaffed and..." "Audrey, please, talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about." Her voice cracked. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine, and they both knew it. That night, Alec lay awake listening to Audrey's restless breathing. His phone buzzed with a text from Kyle Shaw, his oldest friend and a financial analyst. "Alec, did Audrey mention any large withdrawals? I saw something odd in that account info you asked me to check. Call me tomorrow." Alec's stomach knotted. 3 weeks ago, he'd noticed unexplained gaps in their joint account statements. When he'd asked Audrey, she'd brushed it off as hospital reimbursements and family loans. But his instincts, honed by years of precision work and attention to detail, screamed that something was deeply wrong. He started keeping notes. Chapter 2. The Last Day. The morning of March 15th started like any other, except for the envelope. Alec found it under his coffee mug. Audrey's handwriting on the outside, just his name, no explanation. Inside was a USB drive and a note in her shaky script. "If anything happens to me, watch this first, then decide what to do. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I love you. A." His hands shook as he pocketed both items. Audrey? The house was empty. Her car was gone. He called her cell. Straight to voicemail. He called the hospital. She'd called in sick. Panic crawled up his spine. He tried Clarissa's number. It rang once before going to voicemail, which was strange because Clarissa always answered, especially for potential crisis she could insert herself into. By 2 p.m., Alec was driving through town, checking Audrey's usual spots: the library, the park where they'd had their first date, the coffee shop where she met her book club. Nothing. At 4 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Vance, this is Detective Forrest Bridges with the County Sheriff's Department. I need you to come to Riverside Park immediately." The world tilted. "What happened?" "It's about your wife, sir. Please come now." Alec's Silverado roared to life, tires screeching as he tore through traffic. Riverside Park was 20 minutes away. He made it in 12. The scene was chaos. Police cars, an ambulance, yellow tape cordoning off the old stone bridge that arched over the churning rapids. Detective Bridges was a tall, silver-haired man with kind eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Vance, I'm very sorry. Your wife was found in the water by a jogger about an hour ago. Paramedics tried to revive her, but..." The rest came in fragments. Audrey's car parked on the overlook. Her purse on the bridge. No signs of struggle. Witnesses saw a woman matching her description on the bridge alone around noon. Apparent suicide. Alec felt like he was drowning in air. No, Audrey wouldn't..." "I understand this is devastating," Bridges said gently. "We'll need you to formally identify her and answer some questions. Is there anyone you can call? Family?" Before Alec could answer, a silver Mercedes screeched into the parking lot. Clarissa Stafford emerged in designer sunglasses and a black dress that looked suspiciously ready for morning. "Oh my God, Audrey!" She ran toward the bridge, but an officer caught her. "Let me see her. That's my baby sister. Oh God, what happened?" Her performance was flawless, the grief-stricken sister, mascara running, voice breaking. But Alec noticed something odd. She wasn't surprised. She was prepared. "Ms. Stafford, I need you to calm down," Detective Bridges said. "Calm down? My sister is dead." Clarissa's eyes found Alec, and something ugly flashed across her face before the mask of grief returned. "This is your fault. You did this to her." "Excuse me?" Alec's voice was ice. "She was miserable. She told me everything, how controlling you were, how you monitored her money, how you made her feel trapped." "That's a lie," Alec said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "Ma'am, this isn't the time," Bridges interjected. "She was scared of you," Clarissa shrieked. "She wanted to leave, but she was terrified of what you'd do." Other officers were watching now. Alec felt the weight of their gazes, saw the calculation behind their eyes. Controlling husband, dead wife, the oldest story in the book. "Detective," Alec said quietly, "my wife left me something this morning, an envelope with a USB drive. I haven't watched it yet, but I think you should." Clarissa's face went perfectly still. "What kind of something?" Bridges asked. "I don't know, but she said to watch it if anything happened to her." Alec pulled the drive from his pocket. She knew. Somehow, she knew. Chapter 3. The Funeral. 4 days later, St. Michael's Church was packed for Audrey Vance's funeral. The cherrywood casket at the altar was closed. The rapids had been brutal. Alec sat in the front pew, hollow-eyed and silent, Kyle Shaw beside him as moral support. Detective Bridges stood near the back, his presence unusual but not unprecedented in potential suspicious death cases. The official ruling was suicide, pending toxicology and further investigation. But Alec knew better now. He'd watched the USB drive that night, alone in his workshop while police processed his home. What he saw had turned his grief into cold, calculated fury. The service was a blur of platitudes and hymns. Then came the eulogies. Clarissa stood, resplendent in vintage Chanel, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "My baby sister was the light of my life," she began, voice quavering. "After our mother died, I raised her. I protected her. I would have done anything for her." Her eyes found Alec. "But I couldn't protect her from the darkness in her own home, from the man who—" "Sit down, Clarissa." Alec's voice cut through the church like a blade. Gasps rippled through the pews. Clarissa's mouth opened in shock. "Excuse me?" I said, "Sit down." Alec stood, and despite his grief, he radiated a quiet, dangerous authority. "You've said enough lies. How dare you? At my sister's funeral. Your sister's funeral is a stage for you." The words exploded from Alec, months of suppressed rage finally breaking free. "You're performing, Clarissa, like you always do. But the show's over." The crowd murmured, scandalized. Father McKenna looked panicked. But Detective Bridges was moving forward, hand raised. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Stafford, I think we need to—" "He drove her to death!" Clarissa screamed, abandoning pretense. "Arrest him! He manipulated her, isolated her, controlled her money. She was terrified. I have texts. I have voicemails. I have—" "We found her diary," Detective Bridges announced loudly, silencing the church. He held up a leather-bound journal, evidence bag crinkling. "In her car, along with her phone, which had an unsent text message and a voicemail saved to drafts." Clarissa's face drained of color. "What?" "Before I read from the diary," Bridges continued, his voice carrying authority honed by 30 years in law enforcement, "let me play the voicemail she recorded 2 days before her death. She never sent it because I believe she was afraid. But she saved it. Insurance, maybe, or hoped that someone would find the truth. He pulled out a small speaker, connecting his phone. The church fell into suffocating silence. Then Audrey's voice filled the air, fragile, terrified, but clear. "Alec, baby, if you're hearing this, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I was ashamed. Clarissa has been stealing from me, from us, for months. It started small, a few hundred here and there for her business ventures. But then it got bigger. She has access to my old trust account, the one my grandmother left me. She convinced me to make her co-signer when she moved back, said it would help her get back on her feet." Audrey's voice broke, a sob catching in her throat. "I checked last week. $500,000, Alec. Gone. She's taken everything. When I confronted her, she said if I told anyone, she'd destroy us. She has fake texts she created, fake emails, a whole story about you being abusive. She said no one would believe me over her. Perfect Clarissa who raised me, who saved me from Mom." "But Mom didn't die from alcoholism, Alec. I've been remembering things, horrible things. I think she—" The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by Audrey's panicked breathing. "She's calling. Oh God, she's coming over. I need to hide this. I need to— Alec, I love you. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to be brave like you always said I could be. I'm going to confront her with proof and record everything. If something happens, the truth is in my diary and in the cloud folder. Password is Cherrywood or 283. Our anniversary and your birthday. I love you. I love you so much." Silence crashed over the church like a tidal wave. Clarissa stood frozen, her mouth working soundlessly. Then she laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. "That's fake. She was delusional, paranoid. Alec probably made her record that, probably threatened. The metadata checks out," Detective Bridges said coldly. "Recorded March 13th at 3:47 p.m., 2 days before her death. We've also subpoenaed the bank records for the trust account, the one in Audrey's name with you as co-signer, Ms. Stafford. This is insane. $537,000, Bridges continued, withdrawn over 8 months in increments designed to avoid federal reporting requirements, transferred to shell accounts, then to offshore holdings. We found the paper. Trail, Ms. Stafford. We found all of it." Chapter 4. The investigation. The funeral descended into chaos. Clarissa tried to flee, but 2 uniformed officers blocked the exits. She screamed about wrongful accusations, about conspiracy, about Alec's manipulation. But her desperation only confirmed her guilt. Alec sat back down, trembling not with grief now, but with vindication. Kyle gripped his shoulder. "Jesus Christ," Kyle muttered. "You knew. That's why you asked me to check the accounts." "I suspected," Alec said quietly. "But I needed proof. I needed everyone to see." Detective Bridges approached as officers escorted Clarissa out. "Mr. Vance, I need you to come to the station. We have questions, and you have evidence I need to review." "Of course." Alec stood, looking at the cherrywood casket one last time. "Detective, there's more. The USB drive Audrey left me. It's not just about the money. What else is on it? A confession, not from Audrey." Alec's eyes were hard. From her mother, recorded 3 days before she died, 22 years ago. Audrey hid it all these years because Clarissa convinced her it would destroy their family. But Audrey found it again last month when cleaning out storage. That's when everything started to unravel. Bridges' expression darkened. "What kind of confession?" "The kind that proves Audrey's mother didn't die from alcoholism. She was murdered. And the 16-year-old daughter who found her wasn't the grieving hero everyone thought." The interrogation room at the county sheriff's department was cold and sterile. Clarissa sat across from Detective Bridges and his partner, Detective Rita Trujillo, a sharp-eyed woman who'd made her career breaking beautiful liars. "I want my lawyer," Clarissa said for the 4th time. "And one has been called," Trujillo replied smoothly. "But we're not questioning you yet, Ms. Stafford. We're just waiting. See, we have a lot of evidence to review, and we wanted you comfortable while we do." Through the one-way mirror, Alec watched with Forrest Bridges. The detective had allowed him this courtesy after reviewing everything: the USB drive, the diary, the cloud files. "She's going to spin this," Alex said. "She's a master manipulator." She had Audrey convinced that their mother's death was a tragic accident for over 20 years. "Tell me about the mother," Bridges said, notepad ready. Alec took a breath. "Geraldine Stafford. According to public records, she died of acute alcohol poisoning when Clarissa was 16 and Audrey was 12. Clarissa found her, called 911, gave a tearful statement about her mother's struggles. Child Services wanted to separate the girls, but Clarissa fought to keep Audrey. Became her legal guardian at 16 with help from their grandmother. Sounds heroic. That's the story Clarissa told, the story everyone believed." Alec's jaw clenched. But Geraldine wasn't an alcoholic. She was sober for 5 years when she died. She was rebuilding her life, working 2 jobs, saving money to move the girls out of their grandmother's house, out of Clarissa's control. And you know this how? The recording. Geraldine made it on a cassette tape, hid it in a safety deposit box with instructions to give it to Audrey when she turned 18. But the bank made a mistake, sent it to the house. Clarissa intercepted it, told Audrey it was just old home videos too painful to watch. Audrey believed her. Until last month. Bridges reviewed his notes. The diary mentions Audrey finally watching the tape. What was on it? Geraldine confessing that she was afraid of Clarissa, that her older daughter had become increasingly unstable, violent, possessive. Geraldine had found disturbing things. Killed animals in Clarissa's closet, forged checks, evidence that Clarissa had been poisoning Geraldine's food to make her seem drunk and disoriented. Jesus. Geraldine recorded the tape as insurance, planning to take Clarissa to a psychiatric facility the next day. She never got the chance. That night, she died. The coroner found enough alcohol in her system to kill her, along with sedatives. Clarissa claimed she must have relapsed in secret. But Audrey believed her mother's version after watching the tape. Yes, and she started noticing patterns. How Clarissa had isolated her from other family, controlled her finances under the guise of helping. How everyone Audrey got close to mysteriously had falling outs with her because of things Clarissa whispered in their ears. Alec's voice roughened. "Including me, or at least she tried. But I loved Audrey too much to believe the lies." Bridges studied Alec. So Audrey confronted Clarissa about the money and probably about the past. According to the diary, yes. March 13th, the day she recorded the voicemail. Clarissa came over that evening. Audrey had her phone recording in her pocket. We have 40 minutes of audio. And Clarissa admitted everything. The theft, the manipulation. And when Audrey threatened to go to the police, Clarissa laughed and said, "Who's going to believe you? You're depressed, medicated, unstable. I've been telling your friends and colleagues for months how worried I am about your mental health. I've planted the seeds, little sister. You're already a suicide waiting to happen in everyone's eyes." The words hung in the air like poison. "That's premeditation," Bridges said quietly. "It gets worse." Clarissa told Audrey that their mother didn't die from poisoning. Not entirely. After Geraldine passed out from the drugged wine, Clarissa suffocated her with a pillow to be sure. She was 16 years old and she felt nothing. Alec's hands clenched. She said she'd do the same to Audrey if she had to, but she'd prefer if Audrey just did the right thing and disappeared. Made it easy. Chapter 5. The Cloud Never Forgets. Detective Trujillo entered the observation room, tablet in hand. "We're into the cloud account." Password worked. "There's a lot here." She handed the tablet to Bridges. Alec looked over his shoulder. The folder was labeled Insurance and contained dozens of files, bank statements highlighting the transfers, screenshots of threatening texts from Clarissa, sent from burner numbers but traced through metadata, emails to financial advisors, and a timeline Audrey had been building of her mother's final days. But the most damning file was a video, dated March 14th, the day before Audrey died. Bridges played it. Audrey sat in her car, eyes red from crying, mascara smeared. Behind her, Riverside Park was visible through the window. This is Audrey Vance. It's March 14th, 2025, approximately 11 a.m. I'm recording this as a final statement because I think my sister Clarissa Stafford is going to try to kill me, and I need someone to know the truth. She took a shaky breath. Yesterday, after our confrontation, Clarissa sent me a text from a number I don't recognize. It said, "Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon. Come alone, bring your phone and the tape, and we can figure this out. Or I start sending the fake abuse evidence to the police and your work. Your choice." I know it's a trap, but I'm going anyway because I'm going to wear a wire, record everything, and finally stop her. Audrey held up a small recording device. I borrowed this from a friend who does investigative journalism. It's voice-activated and streams to a secure cloud. If I don't make it home, everything Clarissa says will be backed up. Alec will know where to find it. The police will have evidence. I'm terrified, but I'm also done being her victim. Mom tried to escape and Clarissa killed her. I won't let her win again. If this is my last day, at least I'll face it knowing I tried to be brave. The video ended. "She walked into a murder," Trujillo said softly. "Documented, planned, and she walked right in." "Because she wanted to save her husband from suspicion," Bridges added. "She knew if she just disappeared or died mysteriously, Alec would be the first suspect. So she built an airtight case against Clarissa first." Alec's throat tightened. "Did the wire work? Did it record?" Trujillo tapped the tablet. "There's an audio file. Timestamp 12:03 p.m., March 15th, 47 minutes long. I haven't listened yet. Wanted to wait for you." "Play it," Alec said. The recording was chilling in its clarity. Audrey's voice, shaky but determined. "I'm here, Clarissa. Let's talk." Clarissa, cold and controlled. "Did you bring the tape and the diary?" "No. They're somewhere safe, but I'll destroy them if you transfer the money back and leave town. Just go, Clarissa. Disappear and never contact me again." A long pause. Then Clarissa laughed. Empty. Cruel. "Oh, Audrey. Sweet, stupid Audrey. You think I'm here to negotiate? I told you what would happen if you didn't do the right thing. You're not going to hurt me in a public park in broad daylight. Aren't I? Who's going to stop me? The joggers? They'll see a distraught sister trying to console her suicidal sibling. They'll see you, unstable and depressed, climbing over that railing despite my best efforts to stop you." Scuffling sounds. Audrey's voice rose in panic. "Get away from me! Help! Someone! Scream all you want. By the time anyone gets here, you'll be in the water. Tragic suicide. Everyone will believe it because I've spent 8 months making them believe it." A slap. Audrey cried out. "Did you really think you could beat me? I've been playing this game since I was 16. I manipulated investigators, social workers, our whole family. You're nothing compared to that." "Why?" Audrey sobbed. "Why do you hate me so much?" "Hate you? I don't hate you, baby sister. I just need you gone. The trust fund Mom left you is all that's standing between me and my next venture. With you dead, and me as your only heir, I'll finally have everything I deserve. Alec will know. He'll never stop until Alec will be in prison. I've already planted evidence of domestic violence in your medical records. Confidential reports I faked to your therapist using your email. It's all there. The controlling husband, the fearful wife. A perfect story." More scuffling. Audrey's desperate voice. "You won't get away with this." "I already have." The sounds that followed were brutal. Struggle. Audrey's screams. The thud of bodies against metal railings. Witnesses later reported seeing 2 women in a heated confrontation, one trying to climb over the bridge railing, the other seemingly trying to stop her. But the wire recorded the truth. Clarissa forcing Audrey over the edge, holding her down as she tried to climb back up, pushing her into the churning water below. The last sound was Clarissa's voice, breathless and satisfied. "Goodbye, little sister. Try not to haunt me." The recording stopped. The room was silent. "That's first-degree murder," Bridges finally said. "Premeditated, documented, and recorded by the victim herself." Chapter 6. The Sister's Web. While Clarissa waited for her lawyer in interrogation, The investigative team was busy dismantling her entire life. Detective Trujillo led the forensic accounting team through Clarissa's finances. What they found was a masterclass in white-collar crime. 8 different shell companies, all registered to variations of Clarissa's name. Money flowing from Audrey's trust fund through a labyrinth of accounts before emerging as business investments and consulting fees, purchases of luxury goods, a condo in Miami under a fake name, and deposits to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. "She's been doing this for years," said Mitchell Chandler, the forensic accountant brought in to untangle the mess. "Different victims, same pattern. She befriends wealthy women, gains their trust, drains their accounts, then disappears. Audrey wasn't her first." "How many others?" Alec asked. He was still at the station, refusing to leave until every piece of evidence was catalogued. Chandler pulled up a spreadsheet. "We've identified 4 other potential victims over the past 15 years. All women, all with family money, all ended up dead or financially ruined. 1 apparent suicide in Ohio in 2015. 1 car accident in Texas in 2018. 1 drug overdose in Colorado in 2021. And 1 woman who survived but was too terrified to press charges after Clarissa systematically destroyed her reputation and credibility." "Jesus," Kyle muttered. He'd joined Alec at the station, bringing coffee and moral support. "She's a serial killer." "Technically a serial fraudster and suspected serial killer," Trujillo corrected. "But yes, and she's very, very good at it." Forrest Bridges entered the room carrying a thick file. "We contacted the survivor, woman named Maggie McMahon in Colorado. She's willing to testify. Says Clarissa befriended her at a grief support group after her husband died, convinced her to invest in a wellness retreat, then drained $200,000 from her accounts. When Maggie confronted her, Clarissa drugged her wine and tried to make it look like an overdose. Maggie survived only because her daughter came home early. Will her testimony hold up in court?" Alec asked. "With Audrey's evidence backing it up?" "Absolutely. It establishes a pattern of behavior, befriending vulnerable women, gaining financial access, stealing their money, and eliminating them when they figure it out." Alec felt sick. Audrey trusted her completely. Clarissa used their childhood trauma, the mother's death, all of it to keep Audrey under her thumb. "Classic predatory behavior," Trujillo said. "Isolate the victim, control the narrative, make them dependent, then exploit and discard." A uniformed officer entered. "Detective Bridges? The lawyer's here, high-profile defense attorney from the city, Patrick Gillespie." Bridges grimaced. "Of course she can afford the best, with Audrey's money." Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Patrick Gillespie was exactly what Alec expected. Silver-tongued, expensive suit, practiced expressions of concern. He spent 2 hours with Clarissa in a private conference room before emerging with his strategy. "My client is willing to make a statement," Gillespie announced. "But first we need to address the elephant in the room, the so-called recording from the bridge. It's inadmissible." Detective Bridges raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "Illinois is a 2-party consent state for recordings. Audrey Vance recorded my client without her knowledge or permission. That makes it illegal wiretapping. Everything she captured is fruit of the poisonous tree." Trujillo smiled. "Except we're not in Illinois, counselor. We're in Colorado, a 1-party consent state. Audrey had every legal right to record her own conversations. Try again." Gillespie's jaw tightened. "The recording could have been edited, fabricated." "Metadata confirms authenticity," Chandler interrupted. "Cloud timestamps, device, fingerprints, continuous recording with no gaps. It's real and it's damning." "Then we'll argue duress. Audrey was clearly mentally unstable, paranoid." "Stop." Alec's voice cut through the room like a knife. He stood, and despite being outnumbered by lawyers and cops, he commanded absolute attention. "You can spin whatever story you want, but here's what's going to happen. Clarissa is going to prison for murdering my wife and her own mother. Every lie she's told, every life she's destroyed, every dollar she's stolen, it all comes out. And when she's convicted, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Clarissa Stafford really is. Gillespie studied Alec with newfound respect. Mr. Vance, I understand you're grieving, but threats, not a threat, a promise. Alec's eyes were cold. See, while you were plotting legal strategy, I've been doing homework. I contacted every victim Clarissa left in her wake. Maggie McMahon in Colorado, Tracy Bowman in Ohio, the sister of the woman who committed suicide in 2015, Christina Haney in Texas, the daughter of the car accident victim. They're all willing to testify about Clarissa's pattern of behavior. He pulled out his phone, showing emails and text chains. I also contacted investigative journalists at 3 major networks. They're very interested in the story of a serial fraudster who's been operating for 15 years, killing women and stealing their money while hiding behind a facade of sisterly devotion. The trial will be televised. Clarissa's face will be everywhere. Clarissa's voice came through the conference room door, shrill with panic. "Patrick, do something!" But Gillespie knew when he was beat. "What do you want, Mr. Vance?" "I want her to confess, on record, every victim, every theft, every murder. I want her to admit what she did to Audrey, to their mother, to all of them. In exchange, I won't push for the death penalty." Bridges stepped forward. "Mr. Vance, you don't have authority to—" "But the DA does," Alec interrupted. "And I've already spoken with Assistant DA Jonah Hawkins. He's willing to take death off the table if Clarissa provides a full confession and allocution. Life in prison without parole, but she lives." "She'll never agree," Gillespie said. "Then she'll face trial, lose, and spend the rest of her life on death row waiting for the needle. Her choice." Alec's smile was razor sharp. "But I know Clarissa. She's a survivor, a planner. She'll take the sure thing over the risk. She always does." Chapter 8. The Confession. 4 hours later, Clarissa Stafford sat in front of cameras and recording equipment, her designer clothes traded for an orange jumpsuit. Her beauty was intact, but the mask had cracked, revealing something hollow and broken underneath. Patrick Gillespie sat beside her, looking like he'd aged 10 years. Across the table were Detective Bridges, Ada Hawkins, and Alec, present as the victim's representative. "For the record," Hawkins began, "this is the voluntary confession and allocution of Clarissa Ann Stafford, given in exchange for the state's agreement to waive the death penalty in the murder of Audrey Marie Vance. Mrs. Stafford, do you understand these terms?" "Yes." Clarissa's voice was flat. "Then please begin with the murder of your mother, Geraldine Stafford." Clarissa looked directly at Alec as she spoke, defiant even in defeat. "I killed my mother on October 12, 2003. I was 16 years old. She was planning to have me committed to a psychiatric facility after finding evidence of what she called my disturbing behavior. I couldn't let that happen. I drugged her wine with sedatives and alcohol, waited for her to pass out, then suffocated her with a pillow. I called 911 and reported finding her dead from alcohol poisoning. No one questioned it. She had a history of addiction, so it was easy to believe." The room was silent except for the hum of recording equipment. "I became Audrey's guardian because I needed control over her and her share of our grandmother's money. For years I used her. Took money when I needed it, manipulated her into believing I was protecting her. It worked perfectly until she found that tape our mother made." "What happened when Audrey confronted you?" Hawkins prompted. "I panicked. Then I got angry. Audrey was supposed to be weak, easy to control, but she'd found courage somewhere." Clarissa's eyes flickered to Alec. "Probably from him. So I decided she needed to go. I'd been planning it for weeks, planting evidence of depression and suicidal ideation, transferring the last of her money, building the narrative of the unstable wife and the abusive husband." Alec's hands clenched under the table, but his face remained impassive. "On March 15th, I lured her to Riverside Park under the pretense of negotiating, but I had no intention of letting her walk away. I pushed her into the rapids. I held her down when she tried to climb out. I watched her drown." "Why?" The question came from Alec, raw and desperate. Clarissa met his eyes. "Because I could. Because she had what I wanted. Because she was always the favorite, the sweet one, the good one. and I was tired of living in her shadow. And because she paused, something almost human flickering across her face. Because I'm broken. I have been since I was a child. I feel nothing for other people. No love, no empathy, no guilt. Just need and want and hunger. Audrey was an obstacle to what I wanted. So I removed her. That's all. The confession continued for 2 more hours, detailing the other victims, the financial schemes, the cold calculation behind every murder. By the end, even Gillespie looked nauseated. When it was finished, Clarissa signed the documents without hesitation. As officers led her away, she looked back at Alec one last time. "She loved you, you know," Clarissa said. "Stupidly, desperately, completely. It was pathetic, but I almost envied her for it, for being able to feel something that strongly." "She was 10 times the person you'll ever be," Alec replied quietly. "And she won. Even in death, she beat you. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cage, and her legacy will be one of bravery and love. What's yours?" Clarissa had no answer. Chapter 9. Cherrywood and Closure. 6 months later, Alec stood in his woodworking shop, running his hand over a completed memorial bench. Cherrywood, hand-carved with Audrey's favorite quote from Maya Angelou inlaid in brass. "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." The bench would be installed at Riverside Park, near the bridge but facing away from it, looking instead toward the sunrise over the mountains. Clarissa was serving life without parole at the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility. Her trial had been swift. The confession and evidence made conviction a formality. Maggie McMahon and the other victims had testified about her pattern of predation, painting a picture of a remorseless serial killer who hid behind charm and beauty. The media had dubbed her the sister killer, and her story had sparked national conversations about financial abuse and coercive control. Clarissa hated the attention, hated being exposed. In her twisted way, that was its own justice. Alec had recovered most of Audrey's money through asset forfeiture and civil suits. He donated half to domestic violence organizations and kept the rest in trust for a scholarship fund in Audrey's name, supporting pediatric nursing students. Kyle stopped by the shop with coffee. "How you holding up?" "Better," Alec said honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But I'm working through it." "The bench looks incredible." "It should. Audrey deserves incredible." Alec traced the carved inscription. "She saved my life, you know. If she hadn't left that evidence, Clarissa would have framed me for murder. I'd be in prison right now. Instead, justice was served. Audrey made sure of it." "Yeah." Alec's smile was sad but genuine. "She was braver than anyone gave her credit for. She walked into a trap, knowing she might not survive, just to protect me and expose the truth." Detective Forrest Bridges arrived for the memorial bench dedication, along with a small crowd of Audrey's friends, colleagues, and former patients. They gathered at the park as the sun broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Alec gave a short speech about Audrey, not about her death, but about her life. Her terrible puns, her off-key singing, her dedication to sick children, her quiet strength that finally bloomed in her last days. "Audrey taught me that truth is worth fighting for," he concluded, "even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous, even when the cost is everything. She faced her demons and won, and this bench is a reminder that no story should go untold, no victim should be silenced, and no predator should escape justice." They unveiled the bench to quiet applause. People sat, touched the smooth wood, read the inscription. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Alec sat alone on the bench, watching the sunrise. He pulled out his phone and played a video, one Audrey had recorded years ago, laughing as she tried to teach him to dance in their kitchen, both of them clumsy and happy and alive. "I miss you," he whispered to the screen, "every damn day. But you saved me, Audrey. You saved yourself too, and Clarissa lost everything, just like you said she would."